Hey everybody, this is hopefully the third and final video of the Gratitudinal Giving series. I hope you've enjoyed it so far, and thank God this is the last one, am I right? So today, just to recap, we started off just talking about different kinds of things that we support and why, and we talked about those little things that we support like Girl Scout cookies, that those things matter and we get cookies and that's all good. And we talked about kind of subscription type things, $5 a month here, $15 a month there for causes that we care about, things that we're interested in. And we talked about those things that really, pull our passion in our heart. And we tend to think more sacrificially in that, like we're willing to give up some creature comforts in our lives to make those things happen. And then the last episode, we talked about motivations for giving, and some of the motivations that get us to give aren't great. Even for small things, we get guilted into doing something for some kid's basketball program, then we end up eating a $20 candy bar because of it. Or somebody guilts us into helping their kid, collect earthworms or something, I don't know what, and we don't feel good about it at all as soon as it's done. And unfortunately, the church has an infamous reputation for being on the wrong side of this and using really horrible motivation. From hundreds of years ago, literally threatening your life if you don't give, or threatening damnation if you don't give. It's pretty awful stuff. And sometimes there's, very high pressure, kind of coercive stuff coming from the church even today that I've heard about. Makes timeshare seem like a cakewalk. And those things aren't good. And then on the flip side, something that is very common in our country and in the world today is what's called the prosperity gospel, where different scriptures are put together, and it basically says if you are generous toward God, God will be generous toward you. You give a certain amount of money, and God will return that. You'll get a return on your investment that could be tenfold. Well, that sounds like a good investment. Also doesn't sound like the whole point at all, because you don't need to give a rip about anything that God cares about to go for that deal, right? I mean, this doesn't talk anything about compassion. It's more of like a greed, selfish-oriented thing that God just happens to get on board with. So that can't possibly be what's going on. Well, when we take a look at Jesus and ask some questions about what he offered as pictures of motivation, there are three stories that come to mind. One of them, and they're back to back. Yeah. So one of them is about this shepherd who has 100 sheep, and one of them goes off missing, and he leaves the 99. He goes to find that sheep that was lost, finds it, brings it back, and as soon as he's back, he throws this huge party for all of his friends to celebrate his joy in finding the lost sheep. That which was lost was found. The next story is about a woman who has 10 coins, and she loses one somehow in her house. And she tears the place upside down looking for her lost coin. And once she finds it, she invites all of her neighbors over to celebrate with her joy, because one of her lost coins, that which was lost, had been found. And she had to express her joy. And the final story is much more involved, but it basically is a family dynamic story where a younger son of a wealthy father, loses his way quite literally and goes away and messes up his life, making terrible decisions. And he finally comes to his senses and decides to go back home and see what he could make of his life. And as he's nearing home, he certainly gets nervous about what kind of reception he might receive from his dad, who he horribly offended. But much to his surprise, as he comes on the horizon, his dad rushes out to meet him, not with a punch in the nose, but with an embrace and with restoration. He elevated his son right back to the same stature that he had before he left. And that's not all. As soon as he got to his home compound, he calls his people together and they throw a massive party for everyone in his household and probably the community. And it is this roaring party. Later on, we find out why he did this. And it was simple and aligned with all the other things. That which was lost, his son, had been found. He was filled with joy and needed to celebrate. And so what did he do? His celebration and joy wooed, managed, begged a response, a tangible response. I think that's what we have in all of these things that we see here. And I believe that it is a nod to what our real core motivation of why we give at all in the first place. We experience something that has been restored. We find this joy in the love of God. And we have to respond, not in a coercive like you better, but we've got to or we'll burst. There's a story that comes out of Jesus' life. He's going into this town called Jericho. And as he's going down the main drag, he looks up in the trees and he sees this man who climbed the tree. And he recognizes him. This is Zacchaeus, the short-statured tax collector. Now, back in those days, if you were a tax collector, your countrymen would see you as a traitor because you were. You were working for the enemy to get money out of your brothers and sisters. So he was hated and he was wealthy. He ripped off a lot of people because he could get away with it. Well, Jesus sees Zacchaeus, and instead of chastising him, Jesus looks at him, I imagine with a big smile, says, Zacchaeus, get down out of that tree. This is ridiculous. And by the way, I'm coming to your house today for dinner. Now, when Zacchaeus heard this, he recognized that he was not chastised. He was not pummeled. He was kind of invited to his own house to host dinner for Jesus. Kind of one of these weird moments, but he recognized this was a person of great honor and stature that was choosing to have food, break bread with him, and he read this correctly as a reinstatement that he'd been forgiven for what he'd been up to, and that he was valued and included. He, Zacchaeus, who was lost, had just been found by Jesus and was welcomed. And Zacchaeus, recognizing the own lostness and foundness, had to respond. And he responded with joyful celebration, promising at great expense to make up for all the wrongs that he'd done. This is a pattern. This is a pattern for me. I don't give because of coercion. I don't give because I think I can somehow work God over in a deal, or I'm going to get something out of it. I give because I know that I have experienced the grace of God and I can't help it. I've got to be generous, not out of coercion, but because if I don't, I'll burst. It's just a part of being in relationship with God. We're in the flow. The flow has to go somewhere. The flow desires to be expressed. And for those who found it, who found themselves found, we can't help ourselves. And I bet you know what I'm talking about, because I bet there have been times in your life when you've done the same. You could not hold back. And that's all part of the faith. And so now the question is, if this is true, if we've kind of got our motivations figured out, and we figured out that this is a joyful response celebration, that's where the gratitudinal giving comes from. It's all out of gratitude. And we remember, like I talked about the last video, the Good Samaritan, and I kind of presented to you that I think Crosswalk is a Good Samaritan in the world. Then I want to invite you to consider supporting Crosswalk in some way, tangibly. And for some of you, that might be a one-off gift. Fantastic. Thank you. We need all the help we can get. For others, it may be kind of a subscription type thing. You've never done this before and you're like, hey, all right, well, let's try $20 a month or $50 a month or what have you. And you go for that. And you kind of treat it like a gym membership. And then you realize we're more than a gym. And so maybe you'll bump it up over time. That's great. Thank you. We need all the support that we can get. And some of you may be at a place in life and capacity, and you also recognize the Good Samaritan that Crosswalk is. And you're like, man, I am willing to go for something a little stronger here. And I'm able to do a sacrificial kind of generosity here because I recognize this and I want to be a part of this. And I want to partner with this. I want to be in on it. And so for you, you may figure out what that looks like. And for every household, that's different. You got to look at your budget. We're not looking for anybody to starve here, but at least for my household, we recognize that we were saying no to some things like much stronger vacations or a much nicer car, that kind of thing. Many fewer going out to eat in Napa Valley, that kind of thing, because it's expensive. So I think you get that. So then the question is, well, how do you do this? And so I just want to be super practical, and this will not take long. That one of the best ways just to simply get started is go to our website, crosswalknapa.org, and look at the top, look for the tab called Giving. click that and follow the prompts. It will guide you through a process, and you can just do a one-off gift, or you can set up recurring donations. It's very, very simple. It's very safe. It's heavily encrypted. We make sure of that. Crosswalk doesn't hold your credit card information, by the way, so we can't continue to do anything weird with that. That's all handled by this third-party encrypted company, which is, again, very safe. You can use a checking account, you can use a debit card, a credit card. Those of you who, maybe like me, love to build up points so that you can take vacations on the cheap, we do that. We don't charge you the fee, so that you could just do that and go for it. So if that's how you roll, then that's great. Other people have other ways of giving that are a little unique to different situations. For instance, some people have stocks and securities, and there's a great tax advantage to just gift us with the stock itself or the securities. We can handle that. We can receive that, and that saves you a lot of taxation. So we can do that. Over the years, we've had people give us cars that they didn't need anymore, and we flip them through a company that does just that. You get the donation, we get the contribution, and everybody's happy that way. And there may be other ways that you can help us that are maybe more creative, a little different than we've thought about. For instance, over the years, we've had some professional work done, and some of those professionals just said, "Hey, I believe in what Crosswalk is doing, and so I'm not going to give you a bill. We're just going to make this happen." We've had thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of work done over the years by people who did just that. They're not getting any, well, some of them get a tax write-off if it's a business and we can prove what that amount was. It's a little complicated, but we can work that out. Just so you know, our parking lot is in disrepair, and we are hoping to take care of that in the next 12 to 15 months. Maybe in your shed out in your backyard, you have all that cool equipment to pave roads and stuff. Well, hey, talk to us. We might be willing to talk to you. Or maybe you're a roofer, and we have flat roofs that we hate, and they hate us right back. And we need help with those. Well, maybe that's something you could do. These are all just ideas about ways to help. So whatever you can do, if it's a one-off, if it's a recurring, if it's a sacrificial thing in the way and space of your life, I just want to say thanks. We deeply appreciate what you're doing. I believe in Crosswalk, and I hope you do too. And one final word, which you've heard me say now every video. You may give a damn about Crosswalk, but you don't have a dime to give. Keep your money. Save it for food. We'll take other things. We'll take your prayers. We'll take your positive witness in the public. We'll take your presence because you matter to us. But for the money, if you're not in a stage or age or season of life that works out for you, no harm, no shame. Keep your money, okay? We really mean that. We're a church for everybody, regardless of economic status. And oh my goodness, we would be horrified to think that somebody would not come to church because they couldn't contribute financially. So if that's where you're at, no sweat, man. Just come, be part of us because you are a part of us. Okay, all right, thank you so much for hanging in with all these videos. I hope they've been helpful. And again, I thank you for whatever support you can give. It means everything to us as we go forward. Thanks a lot.